It's all good. I think my body thinks that I'm like going to be doing a reading or something because I was sitting here and I'm like, oh, I'm starting to like go into this like altered state slightly, but that's probably because we have a lot of, help.
Yes. Oh my gosh, me too. So as I was getting ready, I was thinking yesterday when we were talking, we were visiting,
Yeah.
and then channeled information would just pop in. I can't even remember, but I know I was like, oh, I'm supposed to share this with you. And so
Yeah.
I was like, I guess that's what happens when two channels get together.
Yeah, totally. I was going to tell you too, like I was on like some sort of cloud nine afterwards. Like, I don't know if you experienced that, but my friend came over after our call and I was like really like high energy, high frequency, so much so that last night I was like, man, I was having trouble falling asleep. So I was like, oh, I have to, I was using all my tools trying to get more grounded because it was like super energizing, like almost like too much caffeine. So I thought that
Yeah.
was a funny, super funny reaction.
Totally. Yes. And then as I was here, I was getting everything ready, and just like you, I could feel the energy come in. I'm like, okay, something's happening.
I love it.
Welcome to the Spirit and Soul Healing Podcast, where we speak about all things related to spirituality, soul level healing, intuitive guidance, frequencies, and much more. I'm Amy Sikarskie, licensed vocational nurse, past life hypnotherapist, master intuitive energy healer, and a clairvoyant physical channel. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Spirit School Online, where we offer courses in energy therapy, free guided meditations, courses and information around learning to connect in with your spirit guides, and much more. You can find me at amysikarskie.com and offerings at spiritschoolonline.com. Hi, this is Amy. I'm so happy to share today's episode with you. I'm still flying on cloud nine. So get yourself, a drink, get relaxed, have fun. If you're traveling, make sure you stay grounded, because this is a very high vibrational, fun, and joyful conversation on channeling. And I'm so happy to invite on my friend Karen Bell. So for all of her information, check the link below. In this episode, we're just jumping right in. We have met some years ago, and like we do with life, we lost touch, found each other again, and we're like, wait a minute, we both channel now? How did this happen?
I know. I was trying to remember what year that was. I think it was, like
Yeah,
2014, maybe. I'm not sure.
very
Anyway.
well could have been. Yeah, when I first got on Instagram, it was way back in the day, so it's been a while. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it was just such a joy to connect again. We had a conversation for listeners. We met up yesterday for a convo, and just the conversation went for hours. I felt it just clicked. So I'm like, let's do the podcast, because there's so many questions I have for you, Karen,
Mhm.
and I just like want to dive back in. So
Yeah, definitely. It was hard to hold back yesterday. I was like, oh, we could keep this going, but we should save something for today. So
yes.
super fun.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on, and it was nice that we both had the opening today. I'm like, Spirit, y'all just aligned it correctly. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Yeah. So fun.
It's really
Awesome.
great. So you're channeling now, and I got to see some of your, I call it vocal channeling, how the energy comes through. And it's more than how in my book I talk about relay channeling, where we telepathically hear it and repeat it.
Mhm.
Can you share with everybody your flow? I know I'm jumping right in the middle, but as
Yeah.
a channel,
Yeah.
like this is where I'm so intrigued.
That's so cool that I didn't know there was a term for that, relay channeling, because that's actually what I've noticed the last few months is a progression. Like I used to get more of like a sentence and then I would say the sentence. And now what
Yes.
I notice is that it's like I'm maybe just aware of the next word that's coming, but I'm not seeing the whole picture the way I was like even just a few months ago. So yeah, as I was telling you, it's been kind of a surprise to me because I don't think I had any intention or plan of doing this. It was just kind of like, oh, this is happening. And I have been doing psychic work for about 16, 17 years. So that's not new. Mediumship also as well, not quite as long, but mediumship as well. So this was just kind of like the next progression. So I went from mediumship to I guess just like writing, like automatic writing type channeling. And then this spring, to my surprise, I started leading a meditation group. And what started happening was in the middle of the meditation, I would just start channeling this being that I already had a relationship with. So I already knew who she was. But it's just kind of, it's the verbal channeling is fairly new. It's only been since, I guess, April that it's been happening. And it's just kind of like on its own train, so to speak. Like I feel like I'm just kind of observing this unfoldment. So it's been really cool to watch that, to connect with her and to experience that.
Yeah. So. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. Yes, you're right. It's only been since April, but doesn't it go so quickly? I feel like when we're meant to do this work, it naturally will flow at the right time. And just like I did, you've prepared for over a decade, like 16 years, I think you were sharing beforehand. And Definitely. That's really important.
Yeah, I think what that is it's like you have to be of a certain maybe energetic frequency or something to get those energies to match up where you're able to link and receive the communication. So I look at the past, maybe I didn't know this was coming, but I think maybe on a higher level I did, or like some part of me did. There was some agreement there for sure. And so, so just like spiritual practice, all these different energetic practices like personal development, inner work over the last, 15 years or so, it's kind of led to this moment where, oh, okay, like this is happening. This is maybe where this was all leading to, right? So people are very curious how to channel, but a lot of it has to do with just like shifting your own energy, just like a radio receiver, so that you start to get into like, you get into receptive mode or in resonance with that frequency that maybe wants to work with you or express through you. So that's kind of the way I see it. Yeah. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, very similar. So the receiving part, absolutely. And what's coming now to share with everybody is when we're channeling our guides or our star or our soul family, beings that are with us and have been for some time, either dedicated to our personal life or for those of us that feel like, okay, or I shouldn't say feel, it is, we do feel, but it's a knowing, it's a real thing that we have a whole team dedicated to helping us when we work with others in this way. So for other healers, channelers, therapists, those that are there in service, we have a team. And over the years, we get used to their energy, we get comfortable with their energy, and it becomes that match. So that's exactly it. And I'm seeing like water, it feels like sometimes it can feel like water, so smooth and the same temperature. And in fact, sometimes there's a distinction for us, like, wait, is that my energy or my team? Because
yeah, exactly. And there is a blend happening. So sometimes it's like you are blending. So, sometimes that differentiation can be a little tricky at first to navigate, to be like, okay, this is what I feel like, this is what this being feels like, this is what this other being feels like, or this is what this collective, it's like getting to know yourself and developing these relationships. So multi-dimensional relationships, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh my gosh, it's reminding me. So a couple of times, I haven't recorded to release, but when I was first getting started, I was also working with Metatron, and that's actually how we met for our listeners.
That's right. I forgot that. It was the Metatron necklace. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I don't even know if I knew that you were working with Metatron. I just for those of you listening, I used to, I still have an Etsy shop, but I had an online kind of metaphysical shop, made jewelry, and I just felt inspired to send you the Metatron one. I don't know that I knew that you actually were actively working with him. So that's funny.
Yeah, I am. And I was looking for that necklace. Like I mentioned, I thought about it 3 weeks ago. We moved so many times. I'm like, I know it's probably folded up nicely in a little jewelry pouch. So I'm about to tear my room apart.
Yeah, it's all good. It'll pop up the right time.
It will. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So shortly after that, I was like, all during that time frame, I was working with Metatron, and then I started channeling More of the automatic writing work. It's so strong and you feel them come in your body. And so then I started channeling and I worked more with my star team, my guides. And I wrote the first 2 books, Messages from the Councils with my friend Connie, and then Activating the Star Seed. So I think that was like 2016. And then in 2018, I started vocally channeling, like physically vocally channeling where they come in the body. And yeah, so in that process.
Were you expecting that? Like, were you kind of feeling that it was going that way, or was it a bit of a surprise when it started happening?
Yeah. So it just, you know how we have our personalities, and I'm stubborn in a lot of ways. So it like had to be my idea in a sense. So I met a friend, I met Nicole, and that's how she channels. So I would ask her a series of questions, and then I was like, okay, I feel comfortable. Like, let's try this. So in my own space, when she wasn't there, I tried it. And to start off, I always worked with the Archangels and Metatron. So I was like, all right, I want to feel Metatron around. And this is where what made me think of this is his energy is so strong. It's completely different than my guides. Yeah. Like I couldn't hold it.
All trees standing behind you or something. Yes.
Yeah. It was such a contrast. I couldn't hold it. And he came through and spoke a little bit, but mostly he works with me telepathically. And I feel him come in, but his energy, I'm like, you can't, like, it's just, this body doesn't fit that energy fully.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was interesting.
He always, to me, I've kind of felt him before. I've never channeled him, but he always feels, it's like this, all of a sudden, this forest feeling behind me, as if I have these like super tall trees. Like, I don't know why it feels that way, but it's just so tall, like just this like really strong, tall, powerful, but grounded. Maybe that's the tree imagery, but just like super, super intense.
Yeah, he's intense and strong. And I feel he's a protector, you know, back like in the 90s when I first got introduced into archangels and working with them for spiritual care. The phrase and like the term and what everybody would go to would be Michael. And I work with Michael. He comes in now and then, but it's mostly Metatron for me. So I've also heard that it's kind of shifting where Metatron is becoming stronger to work with that protection and not to go like too far in this other thought. But Metatron, he's great. I've seen him because I clear energies, all kinds off of people and spaces, and he'll take it like out of our reality completely, you know, like off the earth, through outer space, out of this dimension, gone, goodbye. So he does have some authority in that when we're working with him. So but he's wonderful. And we have that difference where we can feel like, okay, what frequency are we in? So we do switch our energy. Do you want to share with everybody a little bit about your practice? And
yeah, sure. So when it started happening, I think what's interesting is that it was when I was in a meditative state. So I kind of consider that in terms of my mediumship training and these experiences, it's kind of been like, oh, it's that altered state that, for me anyways, that provides, I guess, I think it just like gets your surface mind out of the way and provides that stronger link. So for me, it's just, I guess the practice that I do to facilitate it is just like, I have a really strong daily meditation practice where I do practice an altered state every single day. So I consider that to be my practice time where I'm just like practicing shifting my consciousness and then practicing the blend with Sarai, who's the guide I channel, just practicing that every single day. And then I was telling you yesterday, for me, it's kind of like this blend of consciousness. So I consider it to be like, okay, so she's blending with me and she shows it to me as a percentage. So some days she'll come in and it's like 30% Sarai and 70% Karen. When I'm really feeling like I'm in the pocket with it and I'm in the zone, it's more like 80% Sarai and 20% Karen. It's never like 100% her, which I think is interesting. I was reflecting on that and I feel like it is kind of a co-creation. And so I think the consciousness of the channel, I think, is important. You know, it's so that, you know, you hear of Edgar Casey, who apparently was completely unconscious when he channeled or almost. And in the beginning, I thought, oh, that's the key, because then you're completely out of the way. Now I see it more like, oh, we need the channel. Like there's something there in the consciousness of the channel. So so just practicing that altered state, and then getting to the point where I can kind of do it on the fly, like do it willingly, like be like, okay, I'm going to go in that state now and connect with her. And just, I think that's a real skill that you develop over the course of time. So that's kind of like my philosophy in terms of how I got started with it. But it was more when I was first starting practicing meditation, it was because I was studying mediumship and connecting with the spirit world and going to a spiritualist church and exploring that. So I didn't really have, like I said, I didn't have an intention of like connecting with this other realm, because she's from a different realm altogether. So I didn't have any plan or intention of doing that. It just like started happening. And like everything else with my path, it's kind of feel it sometimes like I'm on this boat or on this train, and I'm like just there for the ride. And I'm like, okay, this is the next stage of what's happening. So it's been fun. It's like, it brings up sometimes discomfort, and then that's my inner work to process that and work through that and clear that. That's my human journey in the midst of it. But it's like, I have so much excitement and passion for it at the same time. I think it's needed right now. So it's like super cool.
Yeah, it really is. Oh my goodness, I have so many thoughts running through my mind. So, I can't help but like kind of hear your story and think about myself, and then, like, oh my gosh, what was my relationship with my guides? And I would get all kinds of questions, and people would be interested, but then I was like, but I don't have that same question, so I never asked them. So, so I guess my first place I want to ask is your relationship with her. Have you felt called to ask her about how do you know her and where she's from, or do you just know that there's a loving being present?
So I'll kind of explain how that started, because it has been a few years. So even though I only have been verbally channeling her for a few months, it was around 2017 or 2018 where I finally, I had a son in 2015. It was kind of like a rough labor. And then the few years after that were tough, like postpartum anxiety. And so postpartum depression. One of the things I did during that time that I was like, okay, I'm committing to this, was like, I'm going to meditate every day. And that was a commitment more for like my own mental health. I had meditated on and off until that point, but never like a solid every day, same time, same spot, like a commitment to it. So I started that in about 2017, and about, I would say a year into it. It didn't happen right away, but about a year into it, I get up pretty early in the morning to meditate. And so I started feeling, it felt just like a blue light or a blue orb beside me. And there was this radiance to it. Like, it just felt like when that was present with me, when I was meditating, I just felt bliss and love. And I could feel this like loving emanation is how I would describe it. So I didn't recognize that was a being at first. I just thought, here's this thing, this energy. Here's this energy. I had other guides that I was aware of. I didn't recognize this as a guide at first. I see now, looking back, that I think, oh, this was just like a gradual attunement probably to this frequency. Mm-hmm. And I also feel like with our guides, they don't want to freak us out. Sometimes they don't want to like blast in and be like, here I am. Like, sometimes that's too much. So there was this gradual attunement. So over time, like months went by, and then I eventually realized I started getting clairvoyant visions of like, oh, this is a being. And she would show me what she looked like. And she was like, she kind of had a Nordic feel to her. She was very tall. Like, when I say tall, I mean like 8 feet tall, 7, 8 feet tall. So she started to show me like her appearance, and I made the association, oh, this blue light is actually this being that's with me. She didn't speak or anything. I just continued to meditate and feel and sense this being beside me. And then that over more months went by. And then that's when I would feel her there and then feel inspired to write. So I would write these little messages to myself mainly at first. And then when I started feeling inspired to start a YouTube channel, it was like I would write out these little scripts for my videos. Mm-hmm. I didn't say that I was channeling. I didn't really feel like there was a need for that, but I would write out the scripts, and then I would film them later in the day as just like a dialogue piece, and I would put them up. So that's how it started. It was kind of this gradual, relationship, this gradual awareness of who she was. And then, like I say, then after a period of time went by, then the springs, the verbal channeling started. And to my surprise, it was pretty, I don't want to say easy, but it just started happening. Like, it was like, if I was surrendered and if I wasn't overthinking it, it would just like, she would just start speaking. And I was a little bit hesitant at first because I remember being concerned about what she was going to say. And I think that's when,
Yes.
when you're talking about the relay channeling, I think it was that phase where I wanted to I wanted to hear the whole sentence before I said it. I was kind of like gatekeeping like this, like, well, I want to make sure that I'm on board with what she is saying through me. Once the relationship kind of deepened and I realized that, okay, everything that's coming through is like loving, wise, profound, like helpful.
Yeah.
Then I was able to let go a little bit, and then it started to flow even faster and a little bit more easily. So that's been the progression, and I still feel it's a progression. I mean, who knows what's next with it, but it's this progression of that's how I feel like we develop relationship with our guides. It's kind of like developing a relationship with actual people where it takes time, it takes time to get to know each other and to kind of trust each other and to figure out, you had asked like about knowing her from before. What's interesting is that I did have a past life regression very early in kind of like my spiritual journey. So this would have been probably 15 years ago. And there was a specific segment of the regression where I was on this other planet that was blue and it was dim. And I was like, and I was aware that all the beings there were telepathic. And so I kind of recognized her when she started coming through. I remembered that regression. I was like, oh, this is the connection. Like I've had this memory. I've felt this energy before. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't say that in this moment I have all the details yet. We haven't really gone into detail about, like, maybe when you interview her, you could ask her, but we haven't gone into like specific details about that. But I do feel that we've had a connection in the past, that my maybe higher self, if you will, is connected to that civilization. So it's super interesting and cool to feel the resonance of it.
Yeah, it really is. I know, it's so interesting. So, very similar to you. And I love how you were sharing. They're not going to just like jump in. When you said that, I was like, I heard like, boo, like scary, like boo, like, no, it's not, no, not like that. Yeah. And so they really, because my experience has been to channel messages for others, especially as I got started. That was mostly my intention and focus. So I never really asked a lot of questions about us. Mm-hmm. Initially back, let's see, like around 2012 to 14 is when I had my first regression, because I had seen many visions as I was receiving energy healing. I had seen many visions of, there were visions I didn't understand. And so I had this regression, and then all these different lives came through, and some of those visions were a part of sections of the regression, and it was off planet. And so I was like, okay, wait a minute. Like, I have lived my whole life and I have never heard of this. What is all this? And then I was like, oh, there's this thing called star seeds. And so,
yes,
and that was before I started channeling them in the way that I do now. So I really just, I kind of just asked the questions about my soul origin, just as a wanting to know, or an awareness of, I'm channeling this energy, where is it coming from? Like what frequency?
What is your soul origin? I'm like so curious to know.
Oh yeah. The first place that I was shown was Andromeda. Like you mentioned that as well yesterday. But my guide said it in a different way. So I was actually in an experience. I was receiving a reconnective healing at that time, which is very Pleiadian star energy. Mm-hmm. And I left the body, and like I started soaring through this cosmic energy that was just kind of like the night sky, dark with stars. And they took me up to a star system. But my team, I heard it very loud in my head, Andromedian. So they pronounce
Oh,
it differently.
neat.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. So afterwards I get on Google and I'm like typing in how it sounded. And then here it
Yeah.
was. I'm like, oh, there we go. I looked up the star system. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the same. This photo right here, it's like the same. So that's where I started. And then like later on, as things progressed, I started understanding, oh, and I'm working with these beings and that being. And I felt a resonance with some a little bit more than the other. But
Mhm.
the collective I work with now are star beings from everywhere. It's the
Oh,
light, yeah, the Council
yeah.
of Light. So it's like from everywhere. And so it kind of did, like for myself, I started with myself, my interests, like with this star connection. And then what is a star seed and what's the purpose and why are we here? So
Yes.
that
Yeah.
info came through in the first two books. And then after that, it's like, okay, I'm helping everybody. Like you don't have to
Yeah.
resonate as being a star being or a particular frequency.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but it was interesting because I never really sat down and said, okay, so each individual being, tell me about yourself. I'd love to hear your biography and how do we know each other? And I feel like in this life, or at least right now, it's not important. Like that's not why I'm
Yes.
here.
Yeah,
In spirit
exactly.
state, I already know all that. So
Yeah.
I just know they feel comfortable and I value, and if I want to say I'm discerning or I judge or I look at, okay, this is what it is. I look at the content that comes through, the
Yeah.
messages that
I was
come through.
just gonna say that. That's what's so important. Yes,
Yes.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I do resonate. I do vibe. But
Yeah.
I did, as you were sharing earlier with the relay channeling, it is like I'm smiling so much over here because you just remind me of everything I went through with your share here. How it's like, wait, what are you going to say next? And
Yes.
sometimes I would get it and sometimes I wouldn't. And then you just
Yeah.
start trusting the process. And now you know what happens. Yeah, Karen, you might, if it hasn't happened yet, it might for you.
Mhm.
It's weird, like you say, you're in this space, everybody, like you're in this space. So for our listeners, and the way it works for me now is I hear the message and I'll see the vision like a nanosecond before it comes through my mouth.
Mhm.
But now, and what's happened when I go pretty much like really far in, I'll be two sentences ahead. So
Oh, cool. That
it's
hasn't happened to me yet, but that's amazing.
and it's
I love it.
wild
Yeah.
because then I'm like over here having this interaction where I know what's coming down,
Yeah.
like the pipeline, let's say, like I know what's coming in on this thread of consciousness. In the
Yeah.
background, I hear my vocal cords speaking.
Yeah.
And if I pull myself out or if I get too caught up in it, I can glitch it because I'm like, wait, hold on. So I glitch the flow if I
Mhm.
start listening to what they're saying. So that's often why I go back and listen to the channel
Mm.
messages. That's one reason. But also, it's different when you're receiving the energy
Yeah.
versus channeling. Do you want to
Yeah.
share a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
sure. Well, I experience it, the best way I can describe it is like that state when either you're just falling asleep or you're just waking up and you're kind of in that twilight state where you're aware that you're kind of awake, but you're also like you can still dream in that state, right? So that's what it feels to me. And I always kind of feel like I'm just like my energy or my consciousness is kind of behind my body, a little bit to the right, where I'm observing everything, but I'm in that like kind of twilight state and I'm listening to everything. There's not a lot of like analytical judgment or anything on my, like when the stuff's coming through, it's just, I'm just listening with curiosity. There's no real, I'm not really processing it intellectually. Like that part of my brain is offline, I think, when it's happening. So same thing as you, when I go back, because I edit my own videos. So when I go back and I listen, like sometimes I'm like, whoa, like this is amazing. Or, sometimes actually right after, if I listen to it too closely after the session, I actually can't take it in. So I need to like give it a pause before I can actually process it. I don't know why that is, but yeah, it's just the exact same as that twilight state. And in the same way, when I come out of it, in the same way that if you have a dream when you're in that state, you kind of remember it right when you come out of, right when you wake up, and then half an hour later, you have no clue. That's the exact same thing. So I'll remember what was said for just a few moments, maybe half an hour after the session. And then if you ask me later in the day, I don't know. I don't know what was said. But if something triggers it, like, if you have a dream about, I don't know, like a dog, and then later in the day you see a dog or you see that dog, you're like, oh, so I'll have that experience too. But that's the kind of altered state that I'm in, where I'm kind of there, but just observing and kind of off to the side. That's how I would describe it. So
Yeah. Oh, and you bring something
cool.
up. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so cool. And when you gave this example of the dog, it reminds me of the benefits of meditating, because we might not know, like sometimes I will go so deep and still where I'm like, I went somewhere and we had a full on conversation. I don't know what it was, but I know that if and when I need the information, it'll be there. Just like the dog brings you that memory. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if there's something that like you're, that you're the guide that you're channeling, or Sarai she is a being, but she's kind of an ambassador for a collective of other beings. So like that's, so if there's something that she wants me to remember, that the collective wants me to remember, then they'll bring it back to me. It's just that in the session, in the actual channeling session, there's so much coming through. Like, I don't think there's any way that like my mind could process all of that in that, like in those moments or in that day. So that's probably that kind of, ethereal kind of disconnection. That's probably, for the benefit of my own mind. Like, it's just kind of like, okay, you just need to be kind of the observer. You can go and watch it. When you edit it, you get to watch it too and benefit from what was said. And that's the funny part, is because I have a Patreon community where we're all just like studying the information and working through it together, because it is kind of like a lot of spiritual work, personal work, but I'm right in the work with everybody. Like, just because the information is coming through doesn't mean that I'm not also, like trying to take in what is said and trying to like, work on that within my own human life. So, so that's an interesting part of it. I'm not like a guru or, like I'm not even really the teacher. I'm just like this channel that's just conveying information, but then I'm also benefiting from the information in the same way that anyone listening is benefiting from it or gaining something from it. So
yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I feel you on that. I'm like, whoa, that just came through. And there was a month, like, I think it was 2 months back, and a message came through, and I almost broke the channel, like in the way I came back a little bit, because I started laughing. So that was a blend, they didn't leave, but I peeked through and I was laughing because I knew in the background, I was like, that message was for me.
Yes, I've had that happen too. Yeah.
They're so funny.
In private sessions, there's like, again, a degree of blending. So sometimes, if my consciousness is like, if it's a 50-50, for example, then I have had sessions where something comes through and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to write this down, because like this is also for me as well. And I find that a lot in terms of sessions or even the channeling. It's like, okay, this is Earth School. You're still like, there's still things that you're working on, obviously, because you're here. So yeah, but it's become fun now. Like, I think 15 years ago, in terms of personal development, spiritual development, when I look back, I was way harder on myself, and it was more like, I don't know, it was just like more disciplinarian. And now it's become more fun and more light and more joyful. And there's still stuff to process, but it's a lot more, I don't know, there's a lot more fun in it. There's a lot more play and lightness, which is cool.
That makes sense. I think absolutely. I feel like we all go through those. And then also the energy on Earth is more like we're working with spirit, and spirit doesn't have to be so rigorous,
Yes.
They have their fun. It's flowing, and we're actually, I feel that we're ascending to a joy state. Like, that's the place we want to live in, is that joy state. And so it's a little peek into that, like, oh, this was really hard. I just am working through a trauma right now, but there's a lot of love, and I can feel the lightness of joy that peeks in, shines like a little ray of light on it. And you mentioned something that reminded me of personalities. And so to the same topic, at the beginning, I was very, I guess, rigorous and strict, and like, okay, who's coming in? And you talk about gatekeeping, like, have a gatekeeper too, but I would regulate my energy where I was like, okay, who am I letting in and who are we talking to? And when I say that, it doesn't mean I know their names, although, but I recognize the frequency, I feel the vibration, and if it's a match. And also when they merge, for myself, it's, Ooh, the body has to be able to hold it. And I think that's where we
Yes.
both had that in common, is all that years ahead of time preparing and doing the work. And when you were
Yeah.
sharing, this is what I wanted. One of the things when you were like, I'm just a channel. I've said that before and they've stopped me. And I'm like, okay. Because they're like, you like, don't discount the work that you're doing, because we have to do quite a bit to
That's
prepare and hold the
true.
space. Like, we've done a
Yeah,
lot.
that's true. That's true. It's good to acknowledge that, because the way that I think about that too is that over the course of years, like sometimes it doesn't feel like you're changing very much, or that there's like, a lot going on. But I think if there are small energetic shifts over the course of years, then like, you look back 5 years or 10 years and you realize, oh, like that work that I did, or that spiritual practice I did, like looking back, that actually did have a huge impact on my system,
Mm-hmm.
on the way that I, express myself in the world, or whatever, on everything basically. So yeah, I think it's easy to kind of discount that, because, day to day, it doesn't always feel like big things are happening. But if you're dedicated to, awakening or your spiritual practice, you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I did. Like for me personally, I have put in a lot of hours of meditation. Like I have, I'm big on yoga. Like I've done how many hours of yoga, little things like that accumulate over the course of time. So
Mm-hmm.
that's probably an important thing to acknowledge, because people sometimes just, our culture is like, oh, we just want things fast. Like, I just want, maybe people just want to be a channel and they just want it to happen tomorrow or whatever. But like putting in the work is actually probably long-term what'll get you where you want to be, ultimately in the end. That makes sense.
Yes. Oh,
So
absolutely. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So but to that, then it's nice, because when we are channeling, we're like, hey, the information,
Yes.
like it's from
Yeah.
them. And so here's the topic. Here's something to share, that sometimes I feel I get more of an understanding about what they're sharing than what the listener does. And there's so many reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
So afterwards, though, if people have questions, I can kind of speak to them and process a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
because when I'm in channel, I get that download of like, it's like literally dropping, a whole book in your head, and you try to
Yes,
read it all in 2
definitely.
minutes so that
Yes, definitely.
it's all,
I don't know what to call that, but it is like, it does kind of feel like sometimes it's like sometimes I think about it like a block of thought. It's like, okay, it's this block of information and it's like downloaded into you like a zip file. So it's like all
yes.
there. And then you're clicking that file to open it, and then it starts to come out. But like, it does feel like, okay, this information is like, bzz, like a
Yes.
chunk, like a big chunk is there. So I totally understand that completely,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, as you share that, what they're showing me is, as I'm listening to the information, then in my consciousness, sometimes I do ask questions. And again, it's not every time, it depends on how present I am, I guess you could say. And
Mhm.
so when that happens, I can access other information, or it's like I can see 360, I can
Mhm.
see all around everything they're sharing. So
Mhm.
sometimes I get little pieces that don't come through vocally that others aren't aware of. And I do
Mhm.
like to share that after. It doesn't
Mhm.
happen always, but sometimes. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll see visions. Like if they're showing a story, then I see the vision. So I might see colors or details that don't come through, and
Mhm.
that's always really nice. I have no idea why this is coming in. There was somewhere I was going, but clearly I feel like I'm floating right now. Our energy is just so
Yeah.
high.
I feel that too. Well, there was something else I was going to say about that too, and now I've lost it. But oh, this is what I was going to say. Like one thing I noticed with that too, when you're talking about accessing the information, is like when I'm in, if when that happens, or when I'm accessing information, it's funny because in the moment it doesn't feel that profound. Like I'm
Right.
just kind of like, I'll just express it to the person or to whoever I'm interacting with, just like, like kind of like we're talking like, oh, what did you have for lunch yesterday? Like it doesn't feel profound at all. But then afterwards, when I come out, if I watch the recording or whatever, I'm like, wow, that was actually not, but it feels in the moment, it just feels like almost matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, like this, of course,
This
this
is
is
it.
how, yeah, exactly. It doesn't feel like anything big. And then you realize later, it's like, oh, that was kind of a,
That's huge.
that was like a huge, profound, like teaching in a sentence or whatever, but you don't always realize that in the moment. It feels kind of simple. So
Yes, absolutely. And so this reminds me, so I've seen a few of your videos and there was one that was so profound and I need to go back and watch it again, but have you, like, is there a specific topic or is there a specific video or message that you really were like, whoa, when you edited and watched back and you were blown away? Is there one you can think of?
There've been a lot. There've been so many. Well, let me just share a few. Let me just start talking and then we'll see where it goes. But first of all, like one of the first things that she would express to me and that came through in the very first session that we started filming was like, she would say, first of all, she would talk about like, we're a collective of healers and you could consider me the ambassador for this collective, meaning there's the collective speaking to her, that's communicating to me, that's going out to a collective. So it's kind of like this mirror effect. But one of the first things that she would express is like, healing is bringing a frequency into alignment. Healing is bringing a frequency into alignment. She'd like repeat that over and over. And then as the teaching unfolded, it was like, okay, this is how we bring these frequencies into alignment, right? So the philosophy behind that is that, of course, who we truly are is our soul self, our authentic self. We incarnate into this physicality. And within that, we have a mental construct, meaning the collection of our narratives, thoughts, beliefs. But most of those have been kind of conditioned into us or programmed into us. And so she talks about learning to see yourself as a computer, as if your body was the hardware, your thoughts are the software, but who you are is the one sitting at the computer. You're the soul that's kind of observing everything. And she talks about how to align your frequency is to start to observe, she calls it the contents of your consciousness. So you're looking at the contents, meaning two aspects of that, the thought forms and the emotional energetic charges that are associated with those thought forms. And starting as you observe those from the energetic of your higher self, they start to be neutralized and released. So like that in itself sounds simple, but that was like,
that's huge.
Like that was like big to me. So her topic that she talks about is like, that's their purpose with this particular teaching, is how to bring these frequencies into alignment within our human self, so that our human self, I mean, this is ascension basically, but our human self starts to resonate with our soul self, and all of those energetic frequencies in the form of thought forms that are not in alignment really with truth start to be kind of released from our system. And then in doing so, our energetic starts to match that higher frequency of our higher self or soul self. But then just recently, like this week, there was a video on relationships, and it was funny because she was talking about like the reason you get frustrated in relationships. The reason we all get frustrated in relationships is because most of the time when we're relating to each other, especially in intimate relationships, we're relating from mental construct to mental construct. So our thoughts, beliefs, narratives that we haven't examined yet are interacting with our partner's construct. And so you're not ever really interacting on that higher soul frequency. You're interacting with oftentimes the part of yourself that's still in a wounded state or still in a limited state. So that I remember just watching that back, which was just last week, and being like, oh my God.
Right.
Like just in relation to my own like life experience, I was just like, like I could just feel the truth of it. And that's what I mean about being in the work myself, is like often I'll watch the content and then it's like I walk away with my tail between my legs, like, like, oh my God, that's like so true. And I'm doing that, or, but she's taught me to kind of laugh at myself, because that's really, again, bringing joy to it. It's not that we want to bring the energetic of shame to ourselves because we're in these limited places. It's the opposite. We want to bring curiosity and joy and unconditional love more than anything else, to start to neutralize that. The last thing you want to do is to recognize one of your unhealthy patterns and then feel bad about yourself because you're doing that, right? That has the opposite effect. So yeah, I could go on and on, but everything that comes through with her is kind of on some level, like I'll have to watch it multiple times. Thankfully, in the editing process, you do watch things multiple times, because oftentimes I'm like, wait, I have to watch that again. Like, what did she say?
Yeah.
It's pretty
And
cool.
there is so much that goes on in the editing process. And I think like before I understood it, I was like, what goes on in the editing process? So, but what you do is you take your hour to hour and a half long conversations and
Yeah.
you slice them. You'll split them up into
Yeah.
the topic for the
Yeah,
listeners.
so
Yeah.
there's been kind of like, we didn't really know when we started what the format was going to be, but it quickly became apparent that she had already in mind what the format was going to be. So we usually so far it's been me and my friend Curtis, who's a healer in his own right, and so we hop on Zoom. And so the beginning is usually her dialogue. We don't ask a question. We don't, we don't do anything basically. She comes in and talks for a good 20 minutes, sometimes 30, about whatever she's bringing, basically.
Yeah.
And then Curtis usually presents questions from our Patreon group. So people email him with questions, and then he will ask her the questions. And then, yeah, so when I'm editing, I usually, depending on the intro, like that could be one video or it could be two. Often she changes often there's like a couple subjects in there. And then I'll edit it in terms of just the question and then the answer to the question. And the reasoning behind that, which I was sharing yesterday, is like they really want it to be digestible, practical content. They don't want to overwhelm people. Again, a lot of this information can be overwhelming to like your human self, because you realize, just like I did, like, oh, like, gosh, that's like a pattern that I'm in, or, it can trigger shame within you, depending on where you are in your journey. So yeah, I try to edit it into digestible segments, and so far it seems like that has been beneficial, because people can just watch a little at a time, or they could watch 3 at a time, but it's up to them. They're more in control of like, consuming the content, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. You have a really beautiful playlist going. So just to that, if you're like, oh, I got that, I'm good. I'm gonna go to the next one.
The next one, yeah.
And we'll put the links below, everyone, so they can come over to really get an experience with you and Sarai. And there's something else that I wanted to share. What's coming through is like every time we receive, like I can feel it right now. So if you're watching me on the video, you guys, I'm trying to stay here because the energy is so exciting and it's so high. There's a huge team. Before I logged on to our call, you mentioned the same thing. We could feel the energy shift. It's like, hi guys.
When I get like that, I'm like, okay, stay on the earth, like stay grounded, stay connected. Yeah.
Yes. And so to that, there's so much energy in the channeled messages that sometimes we'll get these activations, and then it becomes, and it always is with channel messages. It's more than the words, but it's
definitely
that energy. So if you're watching and you feel like, oh, I'm good, that felt great, I can go to the next question, watch the next section. Awesome. But if you feel like, oh, I need to take a pause, I need to hold like right here. And what I would do in my personal practice is I would just like go lay down and kind of go into a meditation. But at the same time, I would say it's that dreamy space. I wouldn't go to bed. Like I wasn't asleep, but I would say, okay, I feel energy around. Can you guys are you working on my system? Is there an upgrade about to come through? Is there a message that's going to come in? And that's kind of what I'm feeling right now. They're sharing this feeling with me to talk about it because I had wanted to earlier, and then we have so many things, so I skipped it. But I wanted to ask you, on your process over the years leading up to you being a channel, a vocal channel in this way where the energy's really blending. Do you remember, did you have a specific or a series or anything about like activations physically, energetically, where you could feel them coming in, and like you're talking about the computer system, switching out hardware, we'll say.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of the analogy that they use. They always talk about, because when you're looking at it as if it was a computer, there's kind of like an objectivity to it, like sometimes when we're not seeing things in an objective way, then again the shame gets triggered and stuff. But if you're just looking at your construct, as she calls it, as if it were a computer, and you're looking at those programs, then it becomes a little bit less personal to start to wipe the drive, if that's what needs to happen. You know what I'm saying? But in terms of activations, I think, again, thinking about like the incremental shifts that I've had, I started a process or a healing modality like as a patient of somatic experiencing. And I started that probably in 2018, again, to deal with my labor trauma issue. So I started doing that once a month, and in those sessions, a lot would be shifted. Like there was like a somatic, somatic stuff happening, which of course is indicative of an energetic shift as well. So I remember those sessions, like just, of course, there's the shift, and then there's almost like this integration process, which will last a few days. And then like a few days later, you start to be like, oh, I feel different. So in those sessions, I'm quite blessed to work with a naturopath who's very connected to her guides and stuff. So we would, just like we are today, we'd always be, feel into the room and be feeling all of the, beings that were taking part of the process. So like, I think of that as kind of probably the activations or the shifts in terms of like starting to not only shift my energy body, but like to actually shift also my physicality to be a match for whatever was going to happen. Again, I had no intention or even awareness of how this was going to unfold, but it was clearly, shifting me into this state where I could do this, I guess, is the only way I could describe it. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing with everyone, because that's where I was going back to, like, no, don't say just the channel. You've done a lot of work to get here in your own energetic spiritual practice, but also physically, like in the physical world, we have made intentions and we're showing up, and you like the yoga and the meditation, and then it becomes like healing our own thoughts about things and being
100%.
open. Surrendering and humble enough to say, like, okay, well, show me, like, what am I missing here? There can't be any arrogance is what I'm hearing. So they're like,
and that's just what's coming to share about that too, is I feel like it's, for me, at least my philosophy is this for my own, in terms of keeping the channel clear. There's things that I do all the time continually. It's not like you get there and you're like, oh, okay, I'm here, I'm going to stop doing yoga or stop meditating or stop going to therapy or stop having my monthly SE sessions. It's like, no, I need to, that's like a ritual or a practice of staying clear. It's not like, oh, now I'm clear, because like your life is still unfolding and stuff is still going to happen that's challenging. And so you still have to be continually like clearing. And again, I'm being shown like we are raising our frequency continually. It's not like you get there really. So it's like, oh, this is an expansion. So I would say we have to get comfortable with finding like a sustainable, practice, like a routine and something that we can stick to sustainably, daily, monthly, whatever. And then you just start doing that, with no expectation of what's going to happen, or like not even a goal of like, you're just like, okay, I'm just doing this because it actually, when you start those practices, because you start to align with yourself, your true self, then you start to feel better just in your day-to-day life. So I think that's if there is a payoff day to day, it's like, oh, I feel more of myself. I feel healthier mentally, physically, everything. So I'm going to keep doing this because like, I feel good. I'm excited to wake up. I'm in my purpose. I'm in my passion. Like, I'm excited to be alive. I'm excited despite all of the chaos and difficulty and challenges and stuff. I'm like excited to get out of bed every day and to do this. And so, but that is like a result of practice, like some sort of spiritual practice. So, but what's your spiritual practice? Like, what do you do?
Oh, girl.
Probably a lot of different things.
I think I did, and then I don't, and then I'm like, but I do. So it's so funny. Because I think what happens is it becomes a part of your everyday reality, just like not so natural. So if I were to break it down, I'm like, okay, Amy, really think about it. Put a word to what you do. When I wake up in the morning, I notice my consciousness and where is it? and I
Mm.
pull it back in the body. And honestly, it can take about 30 minutes. I feel like I go out,
Mhm.
and as I'm pulling it back in, I can feel the energy come into my body where my legs get warm and tingly, and then like I ground really deep. So
Mhm.
I take my time in the mornings, and I just like, there's no, like, recently I've been so blessed at this stage in my life that I don't have to wake up and boom, like quick, get
Yeah.
out the door and all of this. So I can have a leisurely morning. So, and then I'll kind of just like go over in my mind, like, what's on my, or what's in the energy for the day is really
Mhm.
what it is. And because I work in this line of field, then my guides will come in and talk to me. So it's like right when I get started,
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. But I'll notice if something was off in the dream state, or they'll sometimes give me a clue like, hey, today's going to be a little challenging day. Get prepared, like
I love
I'll
it.
kind of feel the energy. So that's where I'm at now. And then I just stay, I literally click in with it. And I
Yeah.
was just telling my friend, I'm like, maybe I need to go out and like, go to a concert, or
Yeah.
that's what it was. I'm like, maybe I need to be in crowds, because
Yeah.
I feel like it's just like such a quiet, clean space here.
Yeah.
Our kids are grown and all this, so it actually allows me to really hear. But then the number one thing they're sharing is just my channel is clear.
Yes.
So that's important.
Mhm.
But I will, because the more sensitive we become, that's what's going to happen.
Mhm.
Just that's what
Yes.
happens when you're a clear
Yeah.
channel, or anybody does the work and they're awakening, you feel more. And so
Yeah.
then it becomes a process of understanding how to regulate that. So throughout the day, if I encounter energy like a conversation that's heavy or abrasive, immediately I'm clearing. So a part of my spiritual practice is the meditation,
Mhm.
talking to the energy and visualizing it away,
Mhm.
asking my guides if I don't understand, like, whoa, what's going on? Is this mine? Is this karmic? Is there something here like a contract? Or did
Mhm.
I just sense and feel somebody else's energy? And then I'll go through different practices. And when it gets really heavy, and the times that have gotten heavy over the past 2 years were big things where I was supporting other people or
Mm.
close to other people going through things. And these were like really close friends or family. And
Mhm.
then I would have this awareness of how involved, how close to it, can I get that?
Mhm.
And when I say can I get, it's like for my health and to keep me
Yeah.
on my track of why I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So I would do a lot of clearing,
Mhm.
and I would go, this is my thing, I would go in my car and turn the bass up. Like I have a sound system. And
I
I would
love that.
shake until the mirrors are shaking like that, everybody, and it would just like totally break it all up, and I could finally breathe again. So I get pretty extreme when I need it.
That's awesome. Is that
Yeah.
is sound, because I see your bowls behind you too, is sound the way that you clear most of the time, or like do you have
Um,
different, you mentioned visualization as well, so
Yeah, visualization's the easiest for like the little stuff. But if
yeah.
it's heavy, if it's built up, I'll go to sound. I'll go straight to sound.
Mhm.
And if I can feel it's at a particular chakra, I'll use the bowls. If it's like way chaotic and too much where I'm feeling everyone, then I just go into the car and put all kinds of music on, but mostly stuff with the beats. And I just
Yeah,
let it
nice.
break it up.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. And then to calm myself, that's when I'll do incense, and I'll
Mm.
like tone, and I
Mhm.
breathe and do my meditations. But my meditations, yeah, for the heavy stuff, I don't really meditate. I just go straight
Yeah.
into sound.
Yeah. Nice.
So,
That's awesome. As you're talking about the bass, I can feel the, how effective that is. I don't think I've ever done that, but there's something maybe about that low frequency that can just like,
it
I'm seeing like,
does.
when you drop dish soap into grease and it just like kind of explodes, like
Yes.
kind of like clears
Yes.
it like out of your space with the bass, which is amazing.
Yeah,
Cool.
boom, there it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so that's kind of where I'm at now. But like at the beginning with the awakening, a lot of my spiritual practice was about um, pulling myself out of the religion and like mental stuff, like you were talking about, understanding and at a spiritual space. Why did I pick that? And I'm comfortable with why.
Mhm.
Actually, I'm grateful for the religion for the parts of it that were the good parts that I
Yeah.
was a part of, because it kept me sheltered. It did keep me sheltered, but at that way it also kept my energetic system
Mhm.
so that it wasn't super traumatized,
Mhm.
or had a lot of energy that I would absorb of the world. And so I guess I've always had that connection to the spiritual realm, even though in my upbringing it wasn't spoken about in that way or even recognized in that way. So then when I got into this work, it was different. You know, it was like reading the books, finding the podcasts, or back then I think it was like audiobooks, you know, like these kinds of things, videos. But now it's the maintenance mostly. The maintenance, and I go to a healer multiple times, well, once or twice a month. So I always like try and stay on top of it. And
Definitely. It's like hygiene or something, like energetic hygiene. Like you take a shower for your physical body, and then like there are all these other things that you do. I find it's just good to have a routine, you know, like I don't even think about it now. I just like have my appointments scheduled, and I, you know, have my things that I do every day, and then that's just what I do. And then, you know, it's just a routine, it's a habit, and then you don't really think about it. But yeah, over time, there's those incremental small changes that add up. And then there's also the maintenance that like, oh, okay, I'm clear. And I'm aware of my, oh, here's something cool to talk about, like in terms of being a channel and being aware of your own like ego construct and your own like narratives, because like, I'd love to hear what you have to say about in terms of that being a filter that can sometimes distort the information or like limit the information. Like,
it can.
You know, like, because I'm thinking of you in terms of your students. Do you find that when you're trying to teach people that that happens, or is that like a snag, you know, in terms of learning?
Yes, it is. So, so we have a class, my website's spiritschoolonline.com, and we have a Learn to Channel class, and that's one of the modules that Nicole and I, we put the class together some time ago. I think it was 18 or 19, some time ago. We put it together, and that was one of the main tenets, was the filters and distortions. So that's why it's so important to heal ourselves.
Yes,
and even at this point, like sometimes, I think a few months ago, there was something that was going to come through. Like this was before I clicked into channel, but I felt it in my energy, you know, like this topic. And I guess there's two stories here, but sometimes I'm like, really, do I really want to say that? And then I have to remember, it's not me saying it. I am sharing the energy. I am sharing the message, and this is what they're sharing. And in that moment, if it caught me off guard, you know, I let it come through, and then I'll research it later. And I'm like, okay, where was my hiccup with that? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then I get a series of answers like, well, the person that you're channeling for, because I also do private channeled sessions, this is their belief system. We have to come in and speak to them in a way that they're going to understand.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, sometimes they'll use a different like perspective or wording. So the way that I think of it sometimes is there's layers of consciousness around us. And if they're at this level, so I'm holding my hand up, everybody. Okay, let's just say they're in like one color of the rainbow, and I function from another color of the rainbow. The messages that I get are usually my color or higher in the spectrum to help lift my frequency and lift my awareness. They're not going to understand that. Like that's what their guides are saying, or my guides, you know, their guides are always there too. I need to talk to them in their frequency as a channel when I'm speaking as a friend and relaying, when I'm here as a therapist and just talking, but the same way, the messages are going to come in that way. So that's one thing that we always have to recognize, like, who are we channeling for? It's not about us, you know, in those moments.
That's such a good thing. I've never really thought of that. That's such a good thing to keep in mind. Because I mean, sometimes I think about it because sometimes you know, I don't anymore watch a lot of other channeled material because I'm like trying to keep, you know, I'm trying to stay objective. But before when I did, it was like, you know, if something feels off, there's always the question of, okay, is it the being coming through that feels off to me, or is it the channel's filter that feels off to me? Or, you know, not that we even have to analyze, we could just say, oh, that feels dissonant and I'm not into that. But, you know, just out of like, in terms of the mechanics of channeling, it's just something that interests me. You know, like, like what is actually happening?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It'll hit me a little different if it's my own wound to heal, or something that I need to clear from my own experience or past life or family DNA or community, like, you know, just absorbing. cultures. And so that's when I'm like, okay, and that's where there's a lot of room for growth, is because then after I go back and I listen, I'm like, oh, all right, that's really cool. But there's something else you're sharing, or that came through a couple months ago. I'm just going to talk about it.
Yeah.
At our retreat, I was telling Teresa, I had a retreat a few months ago with my friend Teresa was helping to lead, and our assistants Trish and Karen were there, and I'm like, hey, we're not going to talk about politics. I'm like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go. I hope nobody asks about politics. It was so funny. So I'm channeling, and the first things the guides say, they come through and they say, your system's collapsing. They like kind of go into it, and then they didn't go into details. There was no like focusing on one side or the other. It's just like as a whole. And I think I could feel that around, and I think I needed to hear that as well. And I kind of feel like maybe it's a message for me and whoever needed to hear it. But what I loved is they were like, look, we have a message. And I think that's what I was sensing. I thought somebody else was going to ask, and really they wanted to share it.
Yeah.
But I was nervous because it was such a beautiful group. And I don't, it's not why we were there at the retreat.
Yeah, definitely.
But the way that it came through was kind of just like, it was actually very empowering. It was a heads up. It's like, things are going to get rocky and shaky. And so we're preparing you because you're going to be fine. Like, y'all are here for this. This is why you're here. And so they were teaching us, how to align and heal and be strong energetically so we can hold space and help that transition through it. Because sometimes we feel like spirituality is just spirituality and everything else in life is separate.
Yeah.
But it's really not. Everything is connected.
Definitely.
So, yeah. So that was really funny, though. They snuck that in right at the beginning, and I felt it come through, and I was like, oh, and I was laughing because I'm like, you guys.
That was so funny. As you're talking about that too, what I can feel is like, what they're showing me anyway, is like, there's like, what's trying to happen is that integration back spirituality into all of the, politics, finances, everything. Like, that's what's trying to be birthed, and what will be birthed, but it's
transitioning. Like we're getting it.
That
we're
transition.
It.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, anytime, there has to be some chaos when something old falls, that's the prelude. That's how something is shifting. It's kind of like being in labor with your baby. Like, oh, it's not like that's a pleasant
right.
So, so that's amazing. Like, and I'm sure they would bring it through in a gentle way. That's
they
like,
did.
Not, the energetic, when you're talking about the energetic underneath the words, it's not like there's like a fear energy there or like a panic. It's just like almost, again, matter of fact. It's like, this is just like for your own good. What's happening.
Yeah, just a little heads up. And also as a channel and within our own relationship, that was such a great experience because number one, that was my own insecurities. I'm the one who didn't want to talk about. Nobody cared. It's not like we got in. I was thinking, I don't want to get into like, the tension and argument. Like, it's not even, let's stay away. But it wasn't even like that. That was my own fears and projections. So they came through to give a message, but they also showed me that, like they have, and I already knew this, but it was nice to witness it. Like, they're not going to bring through things that cause division. That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
So, and the energy of it was really actually lighthearted for such a kind of heavy topic. It came through in a lighthearted way. So
recently, and I can't remember where I heard this, but there was someone talking about, how to discern. It was just like a personal account of like, this is how, when I'm watching people channel, this is how I discern between like maybe someone who is clear and maybe not, but it was that in terms of, is the message or the feeling underneath it one of unity?
Yes.
Like, is it oneness and unity and love? And if it's not, then, again, we don't know what might be off in that transmission, but, that was just how he described how he discerns. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah. So. Oh my gosh, we could do a whole other podcast about.
Yeah, I know.
Like, so much is coming in. I might have to have you back on again. That would be really fun.
That would be fun. Well, maybe we're gonna do that interview with Sarai with you, and then maybe in a month or two or whenever we have time, we could do a debrief or something about that. That would be cool.
That would be really fun. Oh my
Mhm.
goodness, yes. So everyone, Karen and I just reconnected after years apart yesterday, and today we're here having this conversation. We're so just excited to share with you. And then in a little bit of time, a few days out, I'm going to interview Sarai. So Karen will be in channel, and I will be asking questions and holding space for that conversation. And then you'll be able to find that on her YouTube. So I'm going to put your YouTube below if everybody, and your website, if y'all want
Awesome.
to go, and then you can follow along for when that content comes out. And as
Mhm.
we talked about, it'll probably be, like a series of clips
Mhm.
from it is what we're feeling it'll be.
Yeah.
Well, it will, but we don't know how many yet.
Yes, we have no clue.
So,
What comes
yeah.
up right now is maybe 8, but who knows? But that's the number. I feel like, oh, okay, 8, maybe eight little
Okay.
topics or whatever. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for it. Yes.
Yeah,
So
me too.
thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you. Yeah, thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Yeah, you're
Appreciate it.
welcome. And I know I'm putting it in notes below, but do you want to share with everybody where is the easiest way to find you, your website?
Yeah, sure. So probably just my website, which is intuitivekb.com. And then all my links for YouTube and social are, at the top there if you're looking on desktop. So you can kind of follow those links to find me on social and on YouTube. So
All right. Woohoo.
awesome.
All
Yay.
right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. If you enjoyed the podcast, I would love to receive the stars or a review or share with a friend. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode.